soon as that's read, we're recording.
Okay. So this is using Behat for behavior-driven development talk. So if you wanted to be somewhere else, you should go now. First, a little brief of who am I. I'm Unity evangelist for quite some time now. Mostly because I develop tools for Unity and developing them, I learned development practices. Basically, it means I'm living somewhere in between development, developers, and business analysts or business, and helping those two areas of business or IT to communicate with each other. I'm BDD practice manager at Untitled, which means I'm doing exactly the same but for BDD clients. In my free time, I'm a creator of multiple PHP frameworks such as Behat, PHP Spec, and Prophecy. I'm for quite some time ago, but a major contributor to Symfony 2, Composer, and Doctrine. And since recently, I'm also hosting the Content podcast about design in PHP. So I think that's enough about me. This talk is about Behat. So Behat is some kind of growing tool in PHP community and booming in Drupal, as far as I know, recently. And I think the interest to Behat will grow even further in this year. And I think the angle through which most people approach Behat from the beginning is really simplistic. It's just like cool functional testing. So probably we'll see a lot of talks about Behat on different Drupal conferences throughout the year. And they will focus on how to technically use the tool, best practices around the tools, how to test your applications. This talk is about how to use what Behat actually is and how to use it for behavior-driven development, which is this tool is about. So BDD or behavior-driven development is really complex mechanism of driving your applications. And in order to understand what BDD is, you need to understand what problem it tries to solve, right? And I would start from the question, what is our job? Anyone has ideas, like, it doesn't matter if you're a manager or a developer, what is our job in the industry? Any ideas? Just shout. Solve problems. Solve problems. Good one. Or?
Give the customer what they want.
Give the customer what they want. Okay. Yep.
Get paid.
Get paid. It's a good one. So I have much more narrowed down and like humble version of it. I think our job is to change the world through the software. So I think the key here is to understand our powers and responsibilities. And it's just like nobody ever in any industry before had so much power as we do to tackle and touch millions of people at the same time with the software we're writing, products we're building. And at the same time, responsibility that we have over like what those people will do, what they will touch, what they will use, how can we impact their lives. And the thing is, we changed the way we approach the products. Before the web, in order to build the product, you needed to find a good idea, you needed to design the product based on this idea, you need to find an investment, spend millions on proving the idea before going into manufacturing. Then you need to release the product, then after quite some time you need to retrieve product from the release pipeline because there is a manufacturing defect in it. You need to fix manufacturing defect, get a new round of investment. So there's a crazy, crazy loop of stuff that you need to do. And at the end, you just hope that you will return all those monies thrown into this product. But as I said, web changed everything because with web, we just have these 3 steps. I'm exaggregating, but it's actually that simple. We find a good idea, we implement it in code, and we deploy it out. And suddenly millions of users can use it for their benefits or for our benefits. And the trick is, how do we use all this power that we have? How do we use all these responsibilities? Where we create social features everywhere, right? Just like we think about social integrations, we think about registrations through Facebook, Twitter integrations, registration comment system everywhere. So we build features. That's what we do. That's what most software engineers think their job is. And the feature itself has different definitions depending on the angle you look at it. In Agile, for example, there is a very specific definition of the feature where Agile says before Agile, you had a pipeline of features where you have like millions of features and you need to implement it in some specific time scale. And you need to go through each feature sequentially. So every single feature should be implemented in order for product to be delivered. So more along the lines of the products that were being built before the web. And then Agile came and said, no, you don't need to deliver all of the features. As a matter of fact, somewhere after feature number 3, you can drastically change the direction of the product, and you can start implementing other features. Somewhere after feature number 4, you can again change direction into different area. And you can go with the product in completely different areas and completely different markets. And you can end up with something like this. And you will close it because nobody uses it. And the truth is, there is a huge interest in the IT industry currently from both government markets and business markets. And Standish Group is one of the most respectable authorities that once in a couple of years do research around how people use the IT features. And those reports don't show really interesting information. Like 45% of every feature we deliver is actually never used. 45% of all the features you ever deliver on the project will never be used. And it's even more drastical if you look at the features that always used. This is must-haves that we always talk about. And it's only 7% of the features. 7% of the features that you deliver are always used by the users. So the truth is, the hard truth, we deliver waste as an industry, as a software engineers, as a project managers. And we deliver must-haves, but 93% of those must-haves will rarely be used by the users. And the answer is we need to stop delivering features, and we need to start delivering value. And the key for that is to deliver as much value as possible with as less features as needed. And this is a tricky question, because if you have a million features, how do you choose which features are needed? Which features will bring most value to your product? It's really hard task. And the answer to this, in Agile or in BDT, doesn't matter. The most commonsensical answer is communicate. Talk with your businesses, with your clients, with your project managers. Here's a newsflash. Your client does not care about your scope. He like all the clients, they say that they do care about the scope. They come to you with predefined scopes that they want you to deliver. It's like 500,000 features in the spreadsheet that they want you to deliver. Even more crazy than this, your client does not care about his budget. He cares only about his business. That's what he cares about. And here's the thing. He worries about his budget and your scope only because you do not care about his business. This sounds like a crazy thing to say, but it's based on my experience in the last year talking with more than enough different commercial clients. And the truth is, nowadays I see budget different. Budget is a controlling mechanism for the clients. Budget is a way for the client to say, I have no idea what it means in terms of money, but money is the only language I can talk in. So if you can't bring me information in form of how much money I can earn, hey, I will talk with you in terms of how much money I will lose. That's what budget is. Budget is admission of inability to talk about revenues or talk about added value of the product. Just because clients can't talk with you in terms of how much you will bring them by developing this project they force onto you talks in the form of how much they will lose, because they need to estimate the product. They need to be able to make decisions. And we were so good with our job, pushing those features, that we convinced clients that features is what they want. That's why they come to the scope. Scopes for them, or the features, is, at this point, is the most important thing in the world, because we convinced them that it is. We convinced them that out of the IT industry, they don't get value, they get features. So, using the classical businessman example, they just try to get as much for their buck as possible. That's where the scopes and budget come from. And what I learned is, as soon as you start talking with the clients about how much they can earn on the project, immediately they stop caring about how much they lose. As soon as you start talking with the client, hey, this project can double your revenues in half of years, they stop caring about how much they will lose on developing this project. That's a natural thing to happen, because that's what business does when they open a pizzeria, for example. They think about return of investment, how much they will be able to earn from this pizzeria. But as soon as they go to IT development workshop, they get talked in terms of features. Like they will need Facebook integration. That's what they need. No. So the question is how to stop worrying and start caring. The answer is start asking business questions. Start talking with business in their terms, in the business terms. Start talking with the business in terms that they can understand. Start caring about their businesses rather than just throwing features at them. So there is limited amount of really useful business questions you could ask. First of all is for whom you're building this feature. Who will be interested in this feature? Who you're delivering value to? Who's interested in this Facebook integration? Who's interested in this registration? Who's interested in comments being on your website? What value does it deliver? So this guy, for comments to exist on your website, what does it do to him? How does it change his life? How does it change his behavior? How does it change his money spending patterns? How would you help this guy to achieve this value? And those three questions, they basically form one of the most important questions in any business. Why? Why are you building this feature? Why are you building this project? Why is it important to have a website? Why do you have a website in the first place? Maybe you don't need it. And why is really simple and really complex at the same time? Because depending on the clients, I've been in the situations where you talk with the client which has a project living and working for multiple years. And you talk with them and you start talking with them in a matter of whys, and they can't give you an answer. They don't know why they need a website. They don't know how this website helps their business. And if you dig deeper, it doesn't actually help. They don't need a website, that's an answer. Instead of spending thousands, hundreds of thousands on implementing or making this website work better, they just close it because it doesn't add any value to this world, to their company, or to the users. So here's a simple example, registration. Every website nowadays has a registration. And your client will come to you with this simplistic idea. I want people to be able to register on my website through some registration form, or Facebook integration, or Twitter. So again, going through the simple questions. Who needs this feature? Users? Well, they're not registered, so they're probably not users. Visitors? So the guy that just visited a website wants to register. Why would he want to register? That doesn't make sense. He wouldn't. Like, for me as a person visiting some website, registration is a hassle. You need to give me a reason to register. You need to motivate me to register on the website. You need to understand who I am and deliver value after registration. So I actually had an example previously where we were talking with the client, and since the first sprint of the project, the client wanted registration on the website. He wanted it really bad. And we kind of were postponing this idea because there was something into it that didn't click. And after sprint number 3, We actually ask you a question like, why do you need it? Like, who you're trying to, what are your customers? What are users of the features of this feature? And he said, well, the users of this feature are previous buyers. So people that recently or previously bought some products on this website, they will want this feature. Why would they want this feature? Is it because every single website on the internet has it? Which is not the right answer, by the way. Well, they needed to see their previous purchases, right? People that made a purchase on the website, they will want to see what they purchased before, maybe to buy more, or maybe just to see what they bought and check that they received everything. So, as a matter of fact, having this conversation with this client that I was talking about helped us to drastically decrease the amount of functionality that required from the feature. It was a really simplistic real estate website where you could put your real estate valuation requests through it and get your real estate evaluated in a couple of weeks. And it was already working, but there was no previous purchases not mentioned or users on the website. And client wanted users or registration just for this case. And we further discussed this, and what we discovered is the users or people that actually do real estate valuation, they're not very experienced in IT. They have no idea what password is. They have no idea. They might not have an email even. And what we did, we removed the notion of registration altogether. And we basically introduced the authentication mechanism, which requires you knowing your contact address or email address. And there is a simplistic check behind this that checks that you are indeed who you claim you are. And by providing this information, you don't need to know password, anything else. It is secure. Behind the scene, it works exactly the same as user registration or authentication works. It just don't bring this hassle onto the users. So as far as you understood what feature is it and how it helps you, then you can start thinking about how you will implement it, how you will bring it. And I will talk about how, or discussions about implementation in a couple of minutes. So based on this feature, here's your user story. In order to see my previous purchases as a previous buyer, I need to be able to register on the website. And here's the clear communication that this user story gives you. It gives you clear understanding of what value this user story will bring to whom and what this feature is all about. Just looking at those 3 lines, business understands what value this brings to the business, to his users, and what is the potential behind this feature, and what is the importance of this feature. And business can say, you know what, the value is too small to worry about this feature. Let's not do it. Or maybe he can say, previous purchases is the core of my business. Let's do them now. And you could have many of those. And each one has a value in specific form. So what you can do is you can prioritize them based on the value. So you prioritize your features, not based on your crazy ideas, not based on the integration layers. You prioritize your features or user stories based on the value they will bring to the customers or to the business. So choose features with highest value and just implement them. How would you implement them? This is the third question that I asked. How would you implement this feature? Because let's face it, there is approximately 1 million ways to implement each feature. It could be really simple, it could be really complex. If you think about product search, for example, it could be as simple as just entering the product name and seeing 10 products that match this criteria. Or it could be product search with pagination, facets, filtering, sorting, all the crazy things. Depending on how much you want from this feature, it will be completely different one. So there is 1 million ways to implement feature. How to find the one that business needs? Well, there is a simple answer, and this is where BDD shines. Examples. Use examples as a language everybody in the team can understand. Example is a universal language everybody in the world can understand. Business can understand examples and can understand exactly what you're promising to deliver. Users can understand examples and use them as an introduction to the system. They can understand what exactly site offers to them. Developers can understand example and based on examples can understand complexity behind this feature. How much of the work I need to do in order for this feature to be implemented. Everybody talks in examples, and that's what BDD provides. So we have our feature which talks about the registration. What examples do we need to cover in order to show this registration working? Well, the most straightforward one, successful registration on visitor provides all the required information. We want our visitors to be registered, and we want them to provide their information. So you use given when then pattern. Given I'm not registered, when I go to the registration form and I fill it with my contact information, then I should be successfully registered and I should be able to log in. That's a really simple example. Okay, what happens if you do not provide all the required information? Well, then you cannot register. Okay, what happens if you provide wrong information, like incorrect email address? Or what happens if the person who is provided information like email is already registered in the system? You provide example for each one of those cases. So instead of talking about abstract business terms, email should be validated or username should be unique, you actually provide examples of people using this system. And this is a language everybody can understand and read. Talk in examples business can understand to discover what business needs. So this is your feature, this is your value, this is examples of this feature implemented. This is what you want from this feature. Just take this document and use it to drive development of your features. This is all there is to BDD. This is BDD. BDD is a practice of driving software development through example-based conversations. You can take this feature that you wrote and give it to your manual tester or developer and just say, that's what I want you to deliver. And that will be BDD. You don't need to go further. That's it. But if we look at this feature, there is a couple of benefits just based on the things we do. First of all, we have example-based conversation. We have conversation built around usage of the system. Second of all, we have really structured format to write those examples. There is a pattern here, like scenarios, inside the feature, given one then, given one then. And as a software engineers, we know one thing about patterns. Patterns could be easily automated. And what could be automated should be automated, right? And that's what Behat is. So Behat is not a functional testing tool. It's not a black box testing tool. What Behat actually is, if you think about in simple test terms, Behat is a certain equals, right? Behat tests that your application fulfills your features. Your features are not tests, they're a description how the application should work in order for you to comply with the business needs. Behat just checks that this thing complies with this thing. That's all there is. So how do you set up this automated environment? If you have the features, it's quite simple actually. You dump them into specific text files called with .feature extension. Just a text file. Just put your features that you already wrote into the text file under the features directory inside your project. You install Behat via Composer or just download one single Behat.far, and then you run Behat init --init. What it does, it generates this one class for you alongside your features. This class basically tells Behat how to test your features. This is where you will describe to Behat how to test your given I'm on the registration form, or when I fill in my correct contact details. So the thing is, you need to provide this mapping for each step. So you have those steps like given I'm on the registration form. So you need to tell Behat inside this class how to test this step. But the cool part is Behat can drastically help you. So next time you run Behat after the init, you will have something like this at the end of the terminal. You can implement step definitions for undefined steps. So I don't know what to do there, tell me, with those methods. So you can take this method from your terminal, copy paste it to the context class, and voila, you can just define mapping like this. You don't need to define the method names, you don't need to define the mapping information. Behat does this for you. Even more than that, you don't need to copy paste. If you run Behat with append snippets, it actually takes those snippets and add them to the context class automatically for you. So the next time after the append snippets you run Behat, that's what you have. It identifies the feature, it goes through the feature, and on the first step, when I go to the registration form, it actually tells you write pending definition. I don't know what to do there. Tell me how to test that this thing actually works on your website. And this is where, if you think about BDT, so there's stories, your user stories, examples of those user stories, and there is internal loop. We'll talk about it later on. We focus on this cycle. So in classical TDD terms, we just change the color, we change the state of our tests. This is where we're going into test-driven development area. So we have our test in the yellow. Well, color it red, change the color. Go to your step, go to your methods inside the context class. Just add some method that checks that there is a registration form. In my case, I just use simple crawler, which requests localhost with /register would be your URL of the website, and it checks that the status code is 200. And if it isn't, then it just throws an exception. You run Behat again, and presumably you don't have feature at this point, so you don't have registration form, and this is an exception that you have. So the next step is make this step pass. And this thing that we wrote, it's kind of complex-ish. So in order to help you there, Behat provides extension layer. So you can simplify this drastically by using extensions like Milk extension. So you can talk with different browsers, with Selenium, with Headless browser, with Phantom.js, using really simplistic syntax. That's what Milk extension provides. And if you use a framework like Drupal, there is a Drupal extension that can talk with Drush and can simplify your workflow even more drastically. You can create nodes, you can create users of specific roles in a really simple way. You can just hook it into your features. So your process of testing, automating the tests of your features becomes even more simpler. So after you integrate all those stuff, you color your feature red. You change the color. And now again, following TDD rules, we change the message and do it as quickly as possible. So cannot open registration form. We go and create registration form. Then there will be another exception. File not found. Maybe you include some file with scripts. Maybe you include some routing file. Okay. Then you will have another exception. Template not found. So the tool will tell you step by step what you need to do in order to implement it. You just define what you're expecting at the end, and then your framework, tools like Mink, and your PHP scripts will tell you what to do next. And you change the message again and again until you go to the green state. And here you are. You know that there is a registration form, and you didn't even open the website. You just know that it is. You can open the website if you want to, but tool drove you through the process. And you go to the next step. So you make the next step green again, just following the process. And then at some point you will hit something like this. So this means you can't make the step green by just changing the configuration of Drupal, by just using tools available through the UI of Drupal. You need to write code. So you can read more about Behat, and it's really simple tool. The hard part of Behat is the DDD itself, the practice of talking with your client. This is something you really need to learn. Tool itself is really simple. As soon as you have features, you can get them cracking really quick. So you have your red state, which tells you there is no objects, or there is no methods on the objects, or there is no functions in your code. You need to write code. And this is where the common mistake is, let's use Behat for everything, because Behat is the only testing tool we need. Actually, it isn't. It can help you to drive the configuration of your system. It can help you to drive simplistic configurations like creating template files, routing. But as soon as you need to write code, you also need to care about design of your internal system. You need to care how you create objects inside. And this is where, in order to create classes, you go to the unit test level. And this is where classical TDD comes in. You write tests for the classes, and you go forward. You're not required to do that, but you need to understand that in order to both have good level of outer quality, good level of quality for users from your system, and good level of inner qualities, good level of quality in the system for developers, you need to do both. Otherwise, you will have users happy about the system and constantly wanting new features, new value out of the system, and developers not being able to deliver those values. So unit tests, again, classical. You describe something, it makes your implementation red, you make your implementation green, you go to the refactoring phase, and after going through the cycle and creating classes and objects and their interactions between them, at some point you will get to this. And this is your first green scenario. That's it just works. So even though you never open the website, even though you never open the browser, you know that this feature works. And you can push this feature to the continuous integration server like Travis, and it can even tell you, hey, it not only works on your local machine, it also works on the production environment. It works in the different environments. It works for all the developers. So the level of confidence here, it is a confidence not in the functionality of your website. It is a confidence that your website actually delivers value. Because if you read through this feature, it doesn't talk about clicking links or, I don't know, seeing navigation. What it talks about is getting value for the previous buyers. And the fact that it's green, it means you deliver value. You're not just develop a website that nobody wants. You develop a website that delivers value to the users. And the cool part about it, if you look at those mappings and you will think, oh, gee, I need to write those steps. Like I fill it with my contact information, I go to registration form. I will need to write them for each single scenario. You don't, because what happens there is at some point you will hit the limit of your dictionary that you use with the clients. There is a limited dictionary. We don't use the whole Britannica to talk with our clients. There's a limited dictionary we use to talk about their businesses. And at some point, really soon in the startup, after the beginning of the project, we start to hit the cup. So we describe all the possible sentences we can talk with the client, and we just start reusing them. So at some point, I should be able to log in. You will repeat it again and again and again in different examples, because that's the way business works. You will reuse sentences. You wouldn't write each sentence for each new scenario. And based on my experience, after sprint number 2, you basically write one new step definition per scenario, or don't write it at all. So there are cases where you just write the scenario, never touch any PHP code, and it just starts fading. You go implement the system, it becomes green. That's it. You don't need to care what you have from this point on. And at this point, what you have green state outside, green state inside, if you use unit tests. If you don't, you just have a green state outside, which tells you you deliver value outside, you deliver value inside. Not only you implemented features, not only you implemented something you committed to implement with your client's contracts, you actually made some difference. So just a simple recap. Things that I want you to take away out of the session. Care about businesses. Start caring about what you deliver and what value you're delivering. Start asking why and for whom you're building features. Why is it important for the business? Why this feature should be implemented in the next couple of days? Why couldn't it be postponed? Talk with your businesses in usage examples. Use examples as a natural language everybody can understand to clarify things even further. And then automate the process if you need to. Use tools like Behat to automate this process to help you with automation. But don't make automation the core bit of your process. It could help you, but that's not the aim. The aim is to have communication, conversation with your clients. And overall, change the world by delivering value. Because that's the power and responsibility we have. We can bring immense amounts of value to people around the world by just doing things that make their lives easier. And guess what? It will also bring money to the businesses we're talking about. It's just start delivering things that do bring value. Stop delivering things that don't. At Envica, we do that for our clients. And when we don't, we teach others to do this. And if you can't be taught or you don't want to do it for your clients, maybe it's time to change the career. So, thank you for listening. Any questions?
What objections do you have to functional testing? Or, I think I know that sort of often in discussion that people are using it probably for the reason why I think in the previous occasions you mentioned that the Behat is being used in ways initially being installed. So yeah.
I'm less worried about people using the tool wrong. I'm worried about you understanding what this tool actually is for. I'm totally okay with people using this purely for functional or black box testing, because there is a potential of tool teaching you how to do things right. That's what happened with me. I actually started Behat as a project for fancy-looking functional or black box testing, right? And then during development of Behat, during the usage of the tool itself, the tool started to teach me how to care about businesses. Through talking in those given one dance, I started to appreciate the business behind this. Started to appreciate communication with the clients. So in this regard, tool basically taught me how to communicate, even though my first initial intentions were wrong. So from this perspective, I'm fine with people using the tool in the wrong way. I just know it's not as effective or as efficient as it would be if they do this right, but I just hope they will learn to do things right in the long term. So my approach is just, I tell you how to do things right, and I trust you to start doing things right at some point. More questions? Yes.
Just back to that registration form. Clients usually want the registration to be, our clients want the registration to be simple for their clients, for their business customers. The problem is that the more simplistic the registration process, at which point do you need to cause inconvenience to the end user for more security? Because ideally, people don't want security. The end user wants a simple process. You go in, you recognize the end user, that's what the users want. The users want the users to be comfortable. Now the problem comes when something is this simple, you now have to make a decision. At which point you inconvenience for security. You ask the end users, they will disagree.
So since quite some time I've stopped looking at the software development as something like two-dimensional. Just like there is the users and there is everything else, like security, development, governance, everything else. For me, software, any software that we're writing, has a different set of users. In Agile we call them stakeholders. So basically, security department in your company or government is the same user for your system as anyone else. And they have their own concerns and their own values. So yes, you're right, users don't care about their security in most cases until they're hacked. But who care about security is your security department. And those guys will tell, look, in order for the system to not be hacked, and you as a businessman to not stop losing money, you need to have this feature implemented. And you have this feature, it's just like it has a different assay, and it has a different value for the business. The business can look at them, okay, customer will want to add comments to the product that he bought, but security guys want us to protect this particular part of the website, or somebody will hack us and steal our money. You know, so it's all about taking care of everyone by just putting everything on the board. So you need to have this conversation. You need to have this conversation with your users. But users are not necessarily guys that use the website. It could be It could be security guys that observe the website. It could be administrators that maintain the website. It could be government, like if you're like building an online casino, could be government that imposes some set of rules on you that you need to comply, or they will fine you. So there is a set of features that pursue different actors, different roles, and different values. It's just a matter of communicating with the client which values are important at certain points of the project, and fulfilling all of them. Does that answer the question?
But I'm just thinking we always get conflicting values sometimes. So
Yeah, absolutely. So you need to have you need to build everything based on the conversation, but you need to have someone who makes this final call. Like you need to have someone responsible who says like, you know what, screw security, let's go for the comments for the products first.
just a question.
Any more questions? No? Yes.
Do you see Behat developing as sort of further notice now? I mean, are there sort of things that on the backlog to do you sort of think it's actually now mature?
It was mature for quite some time. It had quite a lot of missing features for quite some time. That's why we recently released like version 3, which is a major milestone. Generally, as I said, the concept behind itself as a tool, it has like complex interactions behind it. Like it has a parser in order to parse those features and stuff. Like from the developer perspective, there's a lot of things there, but from the user perspective, it's really simplistic tool. Its job to not get in the way. So that's what I'm saying. Like in order to if you get BDD, if you get like 70% of this presentation right, starting to use the tool itself, like yeah, it's just a matter of like spending half hour the quick start guide, installing the tool, and just you start to use it. It's really simple in what it does. So there is not much you can do there. BDD is really interesting practice where it kind of has tools included, but the most of the struggle, most of the challenge comes not from the tools, it comes from the process itself and communication. So you will spend much more time establishing this communication, those communication zones with the client than to establish Behat. With Behat, you will just spend a couple of evenings or days, and it will just start working for you, and that's it. Yes?
This is not such a question, it's sort of a comment. Stephen, you talked about that the Behat sort of recombinant user testing, but also I think beyond that is that going back to Tom's talk yesterday, sort of recombinant user testing, because a lot of what you're doing actually does go right into the UX territory. I mean, the questions you had about Kudryashov, because that's as usability people, we do soda, so we say, you might have different types of customers, but you realise it's the key one that most issues, and you have another key for soda, who is the person who's maintaining the site. So I just sort of say it's really interesting about all of this different people sort of coming at them different times.
Yeah. So that's the most interesting thing about all these approaches and all these practices like this, because I have a friend who's more like into different aspect of modern software engineering. He's DDD proponent or DDD evangelist, domain-driven design, and he basically he takes different angle, but he comes to the same conclusion. So it's just like, for me, it's a verification that we're going in the right direction, just like we're getting there through different processes. And I think the key there is a lot of intersecting areas. Like UX is a good example. It doesn't cover entirely UX. There are things that are outside of the boundaries where BDD cares, right? Just like how to present information properly to the clients. Like BDD doesn't help you there much. You still BDD helps you inform you need to have examples, but it doesn't help on the automation phase. At the same time, when you're describing something in form of examples, some natural or straightforward UX problems become apparent. Like if you have 50 stages of some simple process, oh, people will never use this. So it just exposes issues rather than anything. And there is a lot of intersecting areas, and there is a lot of intersecting areas both in how you approach practices and in the practices themselves of how you look at the world. Users are important. identifying your users is what makes change for the businesses. So making sure that you care about behaviors and making sure that those behaviors contribute to the business, bring value to the business. Basically, like all the practices like UX, BDD, Agile, DDD, they all go in this direction. It's the same. Just different templates. Okay. Right then. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, you can catch me up here to Arias.